Hello everyone, my name is Zach. Welcome back to my channel. I hope you're doing well today. As you can see, today we are filming from my car because I wanted to make sure I got this video up in a timely manner because it is kind of a time-sensitive discussion because it is in regards to an event that just happened on Book Twitter, and my house is being a little noisy today, so I am filming from the car. Sorry if it's not the best video quality or the best setting, but as I said, we needed to have this discussion as soon as possible, and so I just have to make do with what I can. But today I want to talk about the You're Canceled readathon being canceled, and Book Twitter and cancel culture and kind of BookTube's communication and discussion problems. So I'll give you a quick rundown. A few days ago, it was announced that there was going to be a readathon called the You're Canceled readathon. Basically, it was a readathon that the idea behind it was to take the negative aspects of cancel culture, try to flip them on their head, and try to make it a more positive thing out of cancel culture. I thought this was kind of funny. I thought it was a satirical look at cancel culture, which I personally felt at the time was one of the more toxic aspects of the book community, specifically Book Twitter. And so I thought it was funny. Readathons aren't super my thing, so I wasn't sure if I was going to participate in it. But I certainly thought it was funny, and I certainly thought it was a great idea. So I was very disappointed a few days later to find out that the readathon had been canceled. And the reason that the host gave was that there were some negative reactions and people said their feelings were hurt. And my initial kind of knee-jerk reaction to this was that I was kind of mad. I felt like people were taking themselves too seriously. I felt like people weren't able to make a joke about themselves. And so I was kind of upset about it. Thankfully, I slept on it, and then I did a little bit of research to kind of find out the whole story behind it. And my whole perspective on the situation changed. And to tell you why, I need to kind of explain fully what happened and then talk about kind of some definitions of things. So the kind of figurehead of the side that was critiquing the readathon, who was a little bit unhappy with the readathon as it was being presented, was Maddie NS from My Name is Maddie NS. Hopefully I'm saying that correctly. Sorry if I'm not. I have written down some of her tweets. She wrote a very long thread about cancel culture and about this readathon in particular. I don't have time to go over every single point she made, so I only wrote down the key ones for me to discuss, but I am going to link her full thread below so you know that I'm not taking things out of context or misquoting her. So as long as she doesn't delete it, which I don't see any reason why she would, that thread will be linked down below if you want to give the full thing a read. All right, so I'm just going to kind of read for you these tweets, and if I have time, I'll put the picture up. Maddie NS explains that cancel culture was born from Black Twitter. And she said, being canceled means that Black people, especially Black women, have exited the space. They are protecting themselves and their resources by withdrawing support. Now, I read this and I was really confused because cancel culture, as it was explained to me and as I have always used it, is not that at all. I'm going to talk about kind of my understanding and definition of cancel culture a little later, but first I'm going to continue with her tweets. She says, referring to the readathon, something like this inherently frames cancel culture as negative or toxic, primarily because cancel culture robs some people of what they think they are owed: the forgiveness or time or money or attention of those whom they have harmed. I'm going to go ahead and respond to points about this. I don't think anyone is owed your time or your money or your attention, point blank, period. And I don't think people are owed forgiveness, but I do feel like people who mess up, who unintentionally do something harmful, are owed the opportunity to earn forgiveness. I believe people should have the opportunity to fully learn and understand what they did wrong, to genuinely and openly apologize to those that they have hurt, and to change their ways, change the way they talk, change the contents of their books, change the things they post online. Whatever it was they did to harm someone, they should have the opportunity to change that. And if going forward they successfully change and improve, whatever aspect it was that was harming other people, then they should be allowed to be forgiven and move on with their lives. I don't think just because you apologize, you should be given forgiveness, but I think if you genuinely understand, you do apologize and it is genuine, and you try and succeed at improving whatever thing you were doing, then forgiveness should be given to you. But one more tweet I want to read before I get further into this discussion is, I think what people are really rallying against are boundaries. People, often marginalized people, are setting up boundaries. That is the opposite of toxic behavior. That is getting the final say in how I spend my resources. This tweet made everything kind of swim into focus for me, because I agree with everything she says in this tweet, but I have historically said I don't like cancel culture. I've made jokes about being canceled in some of my reviews, and so I kind of realized something's not right here if I agree with everything she's saying, but I'm against cancel culture and she's defending it. And then I revisited that first tweet and kind of realized what's going on here and what the problem is. The problem is we are not referring to the same thing when we talk about cancel culture. I cannot speak for everyone, so I'm just going to speak for myself and for people who I have enough experience with that I feel like I can speak for them.
Hey guys, so I'm in the process of editing this video and I realized there were some things I didn't say as clearly and as concisely as I wanted to, so I'm going to try to pop in to kind of correct some things, beginning with this definition of cancel culture. So cancel culture, as I referred to it in the past, and I think as this readathon was trying to refer to it, is referring to groups that try to take away certain content's rights to exist because it has content that may offend some or content that offended them. There's a huge difference between saying, hey, I'm reading or watching or doing something with this content and have found something that harmed me and may harm you, so I want to let you know, and saying that people shouldn't engage with this content, or this content shouldn't be allowed to exist because it has that thing or because it hurt my or someone else's feelings. That distinction to me is really important. If you want to warn people, 1000% okay. It's actually pretty laudable in my opinion. But if you're saying that it shouldn't be allowed to exist, or that people should be ashamed for wanting to engage with it, when there are lots of legitimate reasons to engage with problematic content, I have a whole video about it, then that's pretty shitty, and that's what I'm personally railing against and calling toxic. I also went on to give an important distinguishment between how context matters when it comes to certain problematic content, and I talked about how Stephen King uses the N-word in his books, and how you might want to avoid his books because you don't want to read books that has that word because it makes you uncomfortable, because you've been hurt by that word in the past, and I think that's completely okay. You should do what makes you happy. You should do whatever makes you feel comfortable, but saying that Stephen King should be canceled, or that you should never buy one of his books again, or that none of his books should be published again because he has the N-word in his books, isn't quite right either, because Stephen King always has bigoted characters and antagonists use that word. At least to my knowledge, it's always an antagonist or a villain who uses that word, and so the kind of context and commentary that Stephen King is using when he uses the N-word is that these people are bad and you shouldn't use that word, and that it's not a good thing and he wouldn't want you to use it. So again, there's an important distinguishment between I don't want to read this book because that's a personal boundary, and then trying to draw a boundary for someone else. And I think when it comes to drawing a boundary for someone else, that's when context really matters, and that's when kind of cancel culture becomes toxic, is that second one. But if it's I don't want to read this because I don't like that word being in my media, then that's not toxic at all. So with that all being said, I'm going to drop you back into the original video where I'm kind of talking about comparing and contrasting the two definitions of cancel culture as I just explained them, and why deep down I think really we all want the same thing.
Cancel culture, as Marianne kind of refers to it, and as she said it was originally kind of created and intended, is very much cancel culture in the libertarian sense. It refers to individual choice to not read a book, to not support an author. It's kind of the sense of canceling as in I'm canceling my order. And I absolutely agree with that form of cancel culture, and I think that's great. As I said, I think you should do what you have to do and what you want to do as a reader to protect yourself and do what makes you happy, because I think reading should make you happy. However, cancel culture, as I refer to it, as people like A.G. McDonald refer to it, when we kind of mock it and make fun of it and we say we think it's toxic, and I think the cancel culture that this readathon was trying to kind of flip is the cancel culture of I don't like something, so I'm going to cancel your option to read it by trying to cancel publication or have it taken out of print. So, fascinatingly enough, I would say we're actually advocating for the same thing, but in opposite senses, using the same word. Really, at the end of the day, we all want freedom of choice. We want the option to read a book or ignore a book and not be judged for it, or not be called stupid because we either read a book that has some problematic content because maybe there's some good commentary about it, or we don't want to read a book that has certain things regardless of context because it just doesn't make us comfortable. It makes us unhappy. So coming back around to this readathon, I kind of understand why the creators canceled it. I think they were backed into a corner. I think because there were so many of them, it was hard to kind of come together and create a unified message between the 7 of them without miscommunication happening. The easiest thing to do was just to apologize and pull the plug on it entirely. So I understand, but I'm also slightly disappointed. A lot of the hosts I've seen have kind of pushed this idea that they wanted to have discussions. They're kind of sad we're not going to have those discussions anymore, but they were gifted the perfect opportunity to have a discussion. We now could have a discussion about how we throw around words and phrases like cancel culture, but we don't have a unified meaning of them, and so we end up unintentionally hurting other people's feelings because we're using words differently than they are. And I think this readathon could have easily gone forward if the host would have just kind of come forward and cleared the air and said, hey, look, we understand now that there are multiple meanings of the word cancel culture. We are referring to people trying to cancel and stop the opportunity to read something because they're offended and take away your choice to read something, even if it has problematic content. We're not railing against your individual choice to not read something, and we don't think you're stupid for avoiding a book because of its content, regardless of its context. I think if they had said that, that would have been just fine and they could have moved forward and we could have had a discussion, but they didn't. They pulled the plug. And as I said, I understand, but it's still disappointing. The lesson I think we should all learn from this, and the lesson I want everyone to have moving forward from this, is that we can't back down from having discussions like this anymore. We can't talk past each other. We have to understand why people are upset, and if there's a misunderstanding like this, we need to extend an olive branch. Say, hey, I didn't understand that cancel culture doesn't always refer to the thing that I use that word to refer to. I didn't understand that it was originally meant to talk about an individual person's freedom of choice. I was using it as the mob mentality of attacking things and trying to get it erased from existence before I have an opportunity to make a decision about whether or not I want to read or support that thing. And I don't really know where to go from there.
Alright, so one more thing real quick. I did edit out part of the video, but basically what I was saying was that I understood the kind of frustration and anger expressed by those who were uncomfortable with this readathon because their concept of cancel culture was the one that Mary Ness presented in the tweets I talked about, and then I'm just about to launch into an apology. The context for that is apologizing to anyone who uses the version of cancel culture Mary Ness presented, who was upset or hurt when I mocked the type of cancel culture that I talked about. So, taking to that now.
I just want to quickly state before the end of this video, for anyone who thinks of cancel culture as freedom of choice, as canceling your support of the book, not canceling the opportunity for a book to exist, I'm sorry that I hurt your feelings, and I'm sorry that I gave off the impression that you are stupid for not wanting to engage with a book that's going to harm you in any way, or that I gave the impression that you are being toxic because you didn't want to support an author that includes things that make you uncomfortable. That was never my intention, but for anyone whose feelings were hurt, I'm sorry. Again, moving forward, I think we just need to kind of work to understand each other, understand that just because the discussion's happening doesn't mean we're mad or that we're ready to fight. We just want to discuss things. We need to clear up what we mean when we say certain things. We need to understand that sometimes misunderstandings happen and that we just need to clarify and clear the air and extend apologies if we need to. Stop running from debates, stop running from discussions, and just talk to one another. Until next time, that is all for me. I hope you all have a nice day.